Hey guys, Steven here, Fanatic Perspective. Got a special guest here today, my brother from another, Mr. Bruce Gilmore, host
Yeah,
of
baby.
a wonderful podcast on the East Coast, One Chance, Many Sounds. And so, quick backstory: Bruce and I, met each other in college, grew up together. He's been on the channel many moons ago, but he's back here, another diehard Cowboys fan. And I want to welcome Bruce first before we get into our little intro because we've got draft night, baby. So, Bruce, welcome to the channel, brother.
Well, Steven, first thing I'll say was stop it, Steven. Stop it. You know you're my daughter's godfather. Stop it. Don't act like I'm a regular on this, okay? So let's put it out there, okay? So we're not just friends.
We're
We're
family.
damn near we're family, okay? So
Absolutely.
let's get it right for our audience. No misrepresentation, baby. Come on now.
So, guys, first off, I wanted to give a big thank you to our video sponsors, Cowboys fans themselves, Boss's Ranch. I got them over here. It's hard to get them on the camera since I'm in the couch like many of the draft prospects you saw tonight as we had a virtual draft for the first time in a very, very long time where everybody is grounded. But special thank you to Boss's Ranch. Ordered some wings tonight, as you can see the bottle I actually used, and wonderful compliment. HEB, for those of you in Central Texas, cold produce, check them out, small businesses, as we're promoting and supporting all the businesses through a very, very difficult time of dealing with COVID-19.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
special thank you to them for sponsoring our video. And Bruce, again, informally, man, thank you for coming on. We talk Cowboys on a weekly basis, just
a weekly,
some legendary conversations between us that
yeah.
probably should have been recorded that we never got to do. But I'm gonna get straight to it, man. The Cowboys, for those who don't know, has selected CeeDee Lamb, Oklahoma wide receiver, with the 17th pick. Bruce, I'm gonna start with you. Initial reaction to the pick right off the bat. What are your thoughts?
Man, look, I'm gonna tell you, I'm not gonna even lie to you, man. I mean, we talked about from jump earlier today, earlier through the week. I've told you one thing you know from me. I love receivers, baby. I'm all game for the 40-point offense. I'm with that. Okay, so the board fell in a way that I couldn't have even predicted that it was going to fall. So. And to be honest with you, there's so many players even left in the second round. No safeties have been picked, but with this 17th pick, us picking CeeDee Lamb, okay, I'm excited. Okay, you don't ever have to get me excited about a receiver. So
why are you excited about? We've talked about how heavy this draft is with wide receiver. I think everybody is aware of that.
Yeah.
But why CeeDee Lamb in particular?
Man, when we talked about it, man, you're looking to get you an elite level receiver. All these other receivers in the draft, you're kind of, excited about traits. So speed. We talked about T. Higgins and ball catching ability. We talked about Rager with playmaking ability and all that other stuff. But when you say you can get an elite level receiver, somebody who did at the highest level against the highest competition and was the number one from day one, and I'm going to get that guy, put him in the offense. Let's go. Let's go, Cowboys. Look, I never tried, you know me, like I never tried to sound like a homer or anything like that. But I will say this, the last time I have been this excited about a pick was Des Bryant, right? Like that was the last time I've been this excited about a pick. So when you're telling me I'm getting me a playmaker on offense, and not somebody I got to talk myself. Steven, we've done this before. How many picks have we been trying to either, whether it was you or me, trying to justify the pick? And this is a pick that needs no justification, right? And I can sit back and just be excited. I can turn on the highlights on YouTube. I can watch the games and see this man perform. That's not to say that this man's going to be an amazing NFL player, but that's to say it gives me hope for this future. Like, I'm excited. But more importantly, before I let you go, more importantly, it shows me the Cowboys have changed their draft philosophy, baby. It's BPA, baby. We're picking the best player available, baby. That's what we're doing. So, hey, shout out to Cowboys. Shout out to Mike McCarthy. The rumors were that he had a big influence on the draft. The rumors were that they were going to pick BPA. I didn't really believe it. To be completely transparent with you, I really was expecting Xavier McKinney at that pick. I thought like they're gonna, or even Kayvon Chason right there. I was like they're gonna go with need and what they thought they needed. But shout out to them for finally doing something different.
So I think Chason would have been the pick if from the things I've seen on Twitter and those we follow,
Mm-hmm.
it did come out. I think it was David Hellman or whoever that said, "Hey, CeeDee Lamb was actually the sixth player on the Cowboys
Mm-hmm.
board."
Yeah,
So to your
it's a
point,
fact.
to your point, them going best player available is awesome. Them having it just happens to be a wide receiver and a class, in my opinion, the most well-rounded wide receiver, in a class that's historically deep, in a class where you're looking at the board and how it fell, and Henry Ruggs goes
Yeah.
to the Oakland Raiders, and then the one thing that you could pencil in this draft after Joe Burrow basically going to the Cincinnati Bengals was that Denver needed to take a wide receiver, right?
Right.
But the biggest thing, so I already started doing cartwheels when and I texted you, said, God bless the Atlanta Falcons. When the
Thank
Atlanta
you.
Falcons decide to go with AJ Terrell, who was
The
like
pit
one of
throw,
the
the pit throw, AJ Terrell.
like, oh
Okay.
damn it, we missed out on AJ
Oh
Terrell, kid.
no, that
Oh, right. And so and then CeeDee's there, and I want to give a shout out to my buddies tonight. I was on a Zoom. I think we were both on Zoom calls
yeah,
with our friends, and
yeah,
we'll talk a little bit later about how we
yeah,
all received this draft experience. But I want to give a shout out to my buddies. Thank you
yeah.
for inviting me to the draft party. Tran, Fagan,
Mm,
Oliver, everybody that
mm,
was on there, Griff, Brandon Harrington. We had a blast tonight just for a few hours, just talking. Felt normal for a little bit, right?
yeah,
Just
right.
but we were already celebrating once the Falcon, and most of us are Cowboys fans in that group, and uh, it was so cool and surreal to have the options we had in front of us. I was cool with a lot of routes the Cowboys would have gone. If they had
Right.
gone, if they had gone Chase on, I wouldn't have had an issue there at all.
Yeah.
But for them to go CeeDee Lamb, and for me, uh, as a guy that covers Texas on this channel, and for as a guy who
Right. The Big 12, baby.
I watched us
Fanatic
lose,
perspective.
I watched us lose the recruiting battle for CeeDee Lamb.
Yeah.
CeeDee Lamb was a guy who OU, Texas. We were back and forth. And then he
Hmm.
goes to OU. He tears it up his freshman year with Baker Mayfield. He tears it
Yeah.
up the next year with Kyler Murray. He tears it up again with Jalen Hurts. And the one thing I will say that he proved, because a lot of people said, he was before this season for CeeDee Lamb in particular, for those who are not understanding, because I also want to get into the traits of the player. He was a guy who a lot of people thought was a product of the system to some degree, and
Hmm.
because they run an amazing system under Lincoln
Right.
Riley, right? And I've
Right.
seen this firsthand
Yeah.
as he transitions from being an enemy of mine to now a part of the family, right? So
Right.
I watched him play next to Marquise Hollywood Brown for 2 years, right?
Right.
Where he was a first round pick. I think he went 16th or 17th overall
Hmm.
last year's draft. And so a lot of people said, and then they had Mark Andrews there too. So it was like
Right. Right.
Oklahoma was
The
loaded, right?
embarrassment. That's what you call embarrassment of riches. But go
Absolute
ahead.
embarrassment of riches, right? And so
Right.
now it's like, all right, I go into this season with Jalen Hurts as my quarterback, who will probably see go day 2, day 3. And then no really proven person on the other
Right.
side, right? And so he had to figure out how to eat, and he was unstoppable this season with
Right.
those circumstances. I love the way OU used him, and he's coming into a situation now in Dallas, playing next to an Amari Cooper, playing next to a Michael Gallup. You have Ezekiel Elliott in the backfield. You have a
Hmm.
Blake Jarwin at tight end. You have all these weapons, and I
Yep.
think it's going to be and I love the fact positional versatility. Hey, you can kick
Yeah,
Cooper inside, he can play outside. If you want to line up CeeDee inside, he can do that. When you guys saw the highlights on ESPN, the first 3 clips they showed, he ran from the slot position, right?
yeah,
He's a,
that's
he,
real.
he's big time on jet sweeps. He's a punt returner. He's a
I don't want.
dynamic.
I don't. He doesn't need to do that. And I'm
I'm just saying the things he
right,
brings
right,
to the
right,
table.
right,
I'm not.
right, right,
I'm
right. He
just saying
doesn't.
the things he brings to the
Yeah,
table.
yeah,
The punt return thing is important though because his one of his greatest traits is what he does after the catch. He
it
is
is.
he's dynamite in the open field with the ball in his
Right,
hands. So,
he is.
talk to me in terms of
Hmm.
what you saw in terms of how the draft broke down because I have a certain
Yeah.
opinion of this.
So I mean, so the draft this year, it was crazy. I mean, I've always told you, Stephen, the most exciting time for our audience, for either watching many sounds or fanatic perspective. I'm gonna kind of peel back the curtain for a second. Like, I'm a big draft head. I've always been a draft head. From I watch combine to pro days and all that other stuff. Right. So putting that out there, the draft almost went chalk this year. Now we're going to go through the picks a little bit later, and I'll get
It's one of my
into
notes. It was super
right,
chalky this year,
yeah,
Bruce.
right. I'll go into that and how it pertains to what was going on. If it went chalk because of the circumstances that are going on right now. However, I didn't think the man was going to be there. CeeDee Lamb. You kind of
Me
hear it.
neither.
I didn't think that player was going to realistically be there. So as I'm watching the board fall, I knew Atlanta was not going to pick the player. So once he got to
Past
Atlanta,
Denver. Yeah.
once he got past Denver, I was like, okay, now the Cowboys are in play for this player. So what are they going to do? Are they going to do the same thing they've been doing, which is pick need, or are they going to pick the BPA, best player available, right? So watching this draft, man, like, when I like CeeDee Lamb as a player. I like him because, again, there was a dominant number 2 on the other side of the field, right? So even with Henry Ruggs or even with the other guy, like, you can
Jared
sit
Judy.
there and be
Yeah.
Jared Judy. You can sit there and be like, hey, he's open because they had to embarrassment of riches again. They had to disperse coverage so you can only play man up on those guys, right? But I'm
And
sitting here with
I
CeeDee.
want to be fair to CeeDee. That I mean, in Oklahoma, that was this year in particular because CeeDee did play
Yeah,
on a loaded team.
right.
His first, but
Yeah,
this past year at Oklahoma, he was
he
the
was the
main
guy.
man. Yeah, he was
Yeah,
the guy.
he was the guy. And again, man, I think again, me and you talked about this earlier today, man, about when you get down to it at the end of the day, you sit there and you look at grades on players and who can provide the biggest impact, right? And I'm glad again, Tristan Fulton didn't even get picked in the first round. There were some guys that we talked about earlier today that didn't even get picked. Xavier McKinley, dog. We were both saying we were good with the pick, right? We both said we were good with the pick if that's where they went. Didn't even get picked in the first round, right? But they got themselves a playmaker, right? Somebody else who can come in and put points on that scoreboard, right? And they didn't say, yeah, our defense is shitty, which it was last year. Our defense was shitty. But they came out and they said the best player available is a receiver. But you know what, Steven, and our audience, I'm going to pull back the curtain for a second, and I'm going to let you talk, Steven. I said it to you before, baby. When Stephen Jones got on that phone and they asked him, and he said, oh, yeah, we got Amari Cooper, we got Michael Gallup, and we got Cedric Wilson. If we can keep him
Cedric
healthy,
Wilson.
and if we can keep him healthy,
Yeah.
right.
Right.
I said, oh, ding, 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 ding.
Wide
They're
receiver.
going to receiver if a receiver is
If
there.
it
And
falls that way. Yeah.
if it fell that way, and this was a particular instance where it fell that way and they stayed true to the board. And I'm not trying to be a homer when I say this, but I applaud the Cowboys for once for not picking need and picking the best player available.
So I do want to go back to something you said. You said you haven't been this excited about a particular draft player, especially in the first round, since Des Bryant.
Yeah.
I think I was pretty fired up for Zeke, especially coming
Oh,
off that
yeah, yeah,
season.
yeah. I mean,
I was fired up for Zeke, but but
right,
there were
right.
friends on my Zoom chat that said the same thing that you did. That they said Dez, because the thing is, and I told him this. I was like, the one thing
Yeah,
about Dez was Dez looked like a cowboay before
from
we
jump.
like it just felt
That's a
he
cow.
just
That's
felt,
a
no pun
he
intended,
lied.
him being an Oklahoma State cowboy, but like, so it's like, it just all felt right. But Zeke was a guy I thought a lot of people. There was only a small crowd in our fan base that was like,
Right,
you can't take a running back that high. But other than
right,
that, I think for the player, because you felt like you were picking a star.
right.
And I'm not
And
going to
can I?
I'm not going to jump to he's a star, but CeeDee Lamb was one of the more notable players in college football.
Right.
I also will say, from a regional standpoint, him playing in Oklahoma, him being from the North Texas
Right.
area, him having those Texas roots. I've talked to you before on the phone,
Right.
and Tran as well, about the Jones family and their influence on seeing their Stephen Jones's son playing high school football at Highland Park. Highland Park
Yeah.
being in these big ass playoff games, winning state championships. They got a lot of exposure, the Jones family, to a lot of these kids through their grandchildren, Jerry's grandchildren,
Yeah.
because one of
There.
them, the Chandler, is still at Highland Park as a tight end right now. They've seen a lot of these guys. They talked to Jalen Rager, who went to the Eagles, but they saw
Yeah.
all these guys or played against them. So CeeDee
Yeah.
Lamb, the game I went to, the Big 12 championship game I went to, and he balls out against Texas. I was there in person
We
at
don't have to
Cowboys
talk about that.
Stadium.
We
Like,
don't have to talk about that.
but just giving an example of just he's the proximity.
Yeah.
It's a regional
Yeah.
familiarity.
You know what? Here's what I'll say about in terms of the excitement. Like, obviously Zeke was exciting, but when you're picking fourth, you expect to get an exciting player. You know, like when you're picking fourth,
Sure.
whether it's a tackle or a lineman or Zeke or Jalen Ramsey. Remember, me and you talked
Yep.
very vehemently about those two players. You
And I
expect
think
them to
when
get
you
a
go
ball.
back and revisit that draft, the first 5 or 6 picks all were Pro Bowlers already.
Ballers,
All of
ballers,
them. So
all of them.
you weren't
So,
gonna
so you,
miss in there.
yeah, you weren't going to. All right. So even with that said, I mean, again, yeah, it was awesome to get Zeke in. Again, I think, I would have been just as excited if we'd have got Jalen Ramsey. But when you get somebody at 17 and the literally speaking, the dead middle of the draft, somebody that you feel is a top 10 player on that board,
They have the top
right?
6. Yep.
Like, and I'm
Exactly.
not, and like, I know people are going to watch this or people are going to think, oh, I'm just saying this because I'm a Cowboy fan and now he's a Cowboy. But no, it's not that. When you watch the man's tape, he's the top 10 player on the board, right? And you get that guy at 17. Now you're like, wow, this is a surprise. I was not even expecting to have this ability, especially when you talk about Dak Prescott in terms of, we all know what's going on with his contract and all that stuff, but providing him with an embarrassment of riches. If Dak Prescott even fails in this offense, right, there's almost no excuse at
No,
this
there's no
point.
excuse. Even from a
Like,
coaching standpoint, he's no. And we're both Dak fans.
we're Dak guys. Yeah, we're
And I
Dak
think
guys.
a lot of people in the NFL and in our fan base have been too critical of what that young man has
Yeah,
accomplished in his first 4 years.
absolutely.
With that being said, when you look at the talent that is currently around
Around.
him, it is, there's and the coaching staff that has now been put together. I think
Yeah,
that's been one of the big misses. There's a lot of people that have great wide receiving cores or great talent, but they don't know how to utilize
yeah, absolutely,
and curate an offense around the skill
absolutely.
set of the quarterback and make everything go. I think you do
Yeah,
have that in a Mike McCarthy and keeping Kellen Moore to make the player comfortable. So all that stuff is in play for the Cowboys. But bro, like, when you see the way everything, it was a great night, man. It was because
it was.
the thing
It was.
we wanted 4 offensive tackles to go before us.
But you remember, Steven, we did an extra for our audience who's listening to this, whether you're part of Fanatic Perspective or you're part of One Too Many Sounds. We tried to paint a picture of how players were going to fall and how they were going to get to the Cowboys, right? Javon Kinlaw, to be honest with you, we called, I know our audience members may not believe this, we call a lot of these picks, ahead of time.
I want to speak on the Kinlaw pick because I was on the Zoom chat with my guys and I said, and I told them, I said the 49ers are either going to take Henry Ruggs or they're going to take Javon Kinlaw. It's going to be one of those two players because I know how Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch think. And it's crazy.
Once the Raiders pick
Ruggs, I was like, boom, they're going to take Javon Kinlaw. It made too much sense. You're basically getting DeForest Buckner's replacement at a much cheaper level. You're putting a young bull, I choose violence, Javon Kinlaw, next to Nick Bosa, who says no, right? That defensive line rotation is insane. Right, and then they still had the second pick to go and get Ayuk, right? So I was like, yo, they good. I know how they think, right? So that was a guy who went off the board. C.J. Henderson went at, 9?
Eight
to the Jaguars.
Yeah.
So
which again, we're going to get into these picks because I do, if we have time, go through all 32 picks because I have opinions about all of them. But
we can do the highlights. I'm not going through all 32 picks, especially on a chalky draft board.
I mean, briefly, I don't have. There's not a hot take for every 32 picks. Some of them are just like, okay, good pick or bad pick, whatever the case is, right? But when it comes to even somebody like C.J. Henderson, once C.J. Henderson went at 8, I kind of already knew what was up. I was like, okay, this, like we talked about earlier in our conversation today on the phone, the path is starting to get painted to how certain players can fall to the Cowboys. There was a point where they showed the Cowboys were on the clock and they showed 5 players, right? And I remember looking at it and saying, as long as the Cowboys pick one of these 5 players, I can either justify it or be excited about it, right? And they apparently, this was the one time that I can remember in a while where I was like A+++. They didn't go for status quo. They went for, the best player. So again, I'll just say that and we can go from there about the Cowboys pick.
Right.
If you want me to grade the Cowboys pick A+, the ace of spades.
Hey, I've seen enough of CeeDee Lamb over the years. I've talked a lot about CeeDee Lamb on this channel for the last couple of years, and I will have now the honor of talking about him, hopefully in a very good light in a positive light for years to come. As for the rest of the draft, just to get into that, I do want to get into more of a macro conversation because I believe this draft was pretty chalky until the end. There was some crazy shit that happened at the end of the draft. It got crazy at the end of the draft. I don't know if people were just impatient or what, but but in terms of how even 1 through
Steven,
5.
Real quick, I just want to say this. We joked a lot about Jordan Love. We talked a lot about him. Right 30 minutes before the draft, we were on Jordan Love, right? Mm-hmm. Could you have predicted that he was going to go to the Packers at 26?
No, not the Packers, not at 26. Neither.
That almost wow, of all the teams, that's not where I had him.
But I want to get so the first 5 picks. So I always thought the draft was going to start with Detroit. Yeah. And Detroit not only picked who we thought they would end up with in terms of replacing Darius Slay, but they didn't make a move. Now, I don't know what conversations they did or didn't have with other teams, but they basically just stood there, went chalk, and picked Okudah. No problem with the player, but it's just
I'm going to forgive Detroit because word had it that they didn't have any offers. That's what was reported by ESPN.
Sure.
They didn't have offers to move. So if you don't have offers to move, you got to stand there.
And the only way people are going to move, because the moves we saw were minimal until it got to the Patriots. Mm-hmm. So the only way people are going to move up there is if somebody was going to go for Tua or Herbert,
for
And
the QBs.
those things were basically like Miami was content with picking Tua at 5,
Yeah,
and the Chargers felt comfortable waiting for Herbert to fall to them till 6. So if both those teams were going to be okay with that, then there wasn't going to be much room for Detroit to work. And
yeah.
from just so then that ends up being chalk through 6. I say chalk because I don't know how many
It
people had
was
Andrew Thomas going to the Giants. He was the highest
so
graded tackle
so
coming into this season.
so I did have a tackle going to the Giants.
I had
I
a tackle
thought,
going to the Giants. I didn't think I thought it was
yeah,
going to be Tristan Wirfs.
right. So we were lying there.
Yeah, but they were going to
Yeah,
pick a
so
tackle. They had to do
yeah,
something to address Saquon Barkley, Daniel Jones. It made sense.
it
I
makes
don't
sense.
know
It
why
was the
Dave
safest.
Gettleman was wearing a mask in self-isolation, but that's a whole nother conversation for another day.
Right.
Um,
Can I
so
can I can I
oh, go ahead.
can I? No, I was just gonna say, can I? If I was being honest with you, the first pick of this draft that I thought like, and I want to preference by saying I like the player, and me and you have spoke about it. I like the player, but Derek Brown with the Panthers, that was when I first thought like, okay, maybe shit may go a different way because that was the first pick where I was like, it's a good pick and I like the player. However, I feel like, and I put in my notes, I said, however, I feel like you could have done, if you're the Panthers GM or a Panthers fan, you could have done better right there at that pick.
When you say better, you're talking about Isaiah Simmons, or what are you talking about?
Yes, yeah. It's Isaiah Simmons. Like, because again, like, and Isaiah Simmons goes to pick after that, if I'm correct,
Mm-hmm.
right?
You went to
He goes to
Arizona.
pick after. He goes after that, and I just feel like Derek Brown is a good player, but again, when you're talking about picking at top 10, I'm looking for dynamic. Let's be honest, Derek Brown did not test well at the combine. I know a lot of your audience are biased, might not watch the combine or those different things, but you put on the tape and you clearly see him
He's
show up.
dominant on his tape is A1.
He,
He's dominant on
yeah,
tape.
his tape absolutely, his tape is A1 dominant. But when again, he's one of those guys where I'm just like, at the end of the day, I'm like, I had a chance, and maybe I'm a bias to Isaiah Simmons, but I was just like, damn, like I don't want to be the guy who passes on
So
Isaiah Simmons.
you're it's funny you say this all because you're actually based out of, well, you're in between Charlotte and VA, but
Yeah,
you spend a lot of time in that region where the
yeah,
Carolina Panthers are. Uh, Isaiah Simmons would have been the popularity pick because he's a Clemson guy. They
yeah.
love him there.
It would have
He's
made
their guy, right? So from a
right, and
local standpoint, he's their guy. That's number one. Number two, Luke Kuechly retires. So you do have a
right,
need within the linebacker position. I know they've talked about, hey, we're going to slide.
yeah,
From what I've heard, they're going to slide over Shaq Thompson, but you still need a multitude of guys to be a part of that
right.
linebacking core. I do think Derek Brown is a very, very good pick for the simple fact
He
that
is
we took both of their
he's a good pick.
but let me explain why. Like he took both of their, or I'm sorry, the Cowboys took Dontari Poe and
Mm-hmm.
Gerald McCoy. Quan Short,
Both interior linemen.
right? Quan Short didn't play much last year,
Yeah,
so those were their two starting interior linemen are both gone.
right.
And
And
it's Matt Rule.
they clearly addressed the receiver position in the offseason with signing a whole bunch of whether it be
Yeah,
Robbie
they went and paid
Anderson.
Robbie Anderson. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So
from that perspective, them saying, you know what, we're gonna build inside out. I'm never gonna, I'm not gonna give him too much guff for that. Now, if
hmm?
Isaiah Simmons becomes the player that we think and know that he can become, I do think down the road there might be a little bit of debate, and it could be problematic. Just moving along, we talked about C.J. Henderson. He kind of
Yeah.
stays in the same neck of woods. He goes to Jacksonville
Yeah. Eight.
um,
At eight.
at 8. And then Jedrick Wills, who the Browns were going to take whatever tackle fell. That was an easy pick for them, I felt like.
That was like chalk at that point.
That's
Like
chalk, right?
because
Every mock
because
had the
at the
Browns taking one of the tackles.
and so I want our audience to understand when we say chalk, it doesn't necessarily mean the player. It just means about we could figure out based upon the team's need what they were going to do in that spot. Like just clear that up, right? Like we may not
I
identify the
hope.
player, like, but we knew what they were going to do. Like, so going back to the Browns, yeah, like that was completely like, yeah, we figured they you got to protect Baker Mayfield. You got an offense that has a lot of weapons on that team, and honestly, you have a defense that has a lot of talent. So the most obvious need was the offensive tackle or offensive lineman
We'll
position.
see.
And
We'll see if they do still make something happen for Trent Williams, aka
man,
Silverback.
they should.
That's
The
that's
question is what
another
the
one that's in
Redskins
play.
want. What do the Redskins want? That's the
I don't
question.
think the
By the
Redskins
way,
know what they want.
I mean, if we're gonna kind of jump through these picks, I would just want to shout out, like again, from my standpoint, Redskins, y'all get an absolute. I'm a Cowboys fan,
They
diehard.
get
I'm
an
gonna
A
pass on.
plus. They did the
You
right
get an
thing.
A plus. You did the right thing. Now the question is, will you do it? But honestly, if you're a Redskins fan, you should be excited. That front seven that y'all have right now
Stout.
is I don't know many. I can't name 10 other teams in the league that have a better front seven on paper than the Redskins. Like that's a very
And
significant
Chase
front
Young
seven.
addresses their biggest weakness, which is getting to the quarterback on third down, that pass rush. Sweat will
Mm-hmm.
get there. Montez Sweat will get there. But
But you still
I
got
get it next to
Kerrigan.
Jonathan.
I ain't mad at. Yeah, like you
Yeah.
got dogs in
Ioannidis.
that. That's
Yeah.
you got dogs in
I
that
get
line.
Jonathan Allen, I get Deron Payne. Like they're up front. They're great. So I mean, not
Yeah,
great. They can be great. So
they can be if they
I
play that way.
like
If they play to their potential.
absolutely. And you get a defensive coach in Ron Rivera.
Right.
Obviously, the number one pick we didn't mention it, Joe Burrow, which we all knew. At
Yeah,
this point,
Kate. That was chalk.
he's already been participating in OTAs.
Yeah.
I'll talk about Joe a little bit later. Those of you on
Right.
this channel, I've talked about Joe a lot this offseason. We all knew he's going to be the number one pick. Greatest individual college season I've ever seen with my own two
Yeah.
eyes as a college football fan. Well deserved. The Jets pick Mekhi Becton, who's absolutely massive, by the way, and his father is
And
absolutely
his
massive.
dad. I was like, I thought. Real talk. I hate to interrupt this broadcast. I thought his dad was the pick. Like I was like, this is John. I was like, oh, this other nigga on the couch is the pick. I thought his dad was the pick. That nigga's huge. That was crazy.
He's
That was
massive.
crazy.
He's
Yeah.
massive. Um,
But also,
I
Richard,
think it was smart.
bringing it back to the Cowboys real quick with the Mekhi Becton pick, because I think that also opened when we talk about it. You got to paint
The Jets were a
how
target for a wide receiver.
right.
Right
So
there.
once Mekhi Becton goes right there, you really start to figure out, okay, maybe a receiver can fall. Like it becomes a realistic target at that point. So go ahead.
Yeah. So we get Ruggs, which we already mentioned, goes to the Raiders.
Which is a Raiders pick.
Classic Raiders, right? Speed merchant. And I like Ruggs. And they're in the division where they see a lot of Tyreek Hill, and they've been terrorized by Tyreek Hill. So hey, why not let's go get us one of those, right? Now
Mm-hmm.
the Buccaneers and the 49ers make a trade. And
one
they
of those
flipped.
rare, one of those rare. We're gonna move. We're changing each other's picks type thing.
So I don't know. It sounds like I'm not. I don't. Obviously I'm not on the phone, but it sounds like John Lynch may have bluffed a little bit and said, "Hey, somebody's going to come up and get this last tackle. You guys have Tom Brady. You have all these weapons. Wouldn't it be a shame if you guys get slowed down?"
Right. That's what it was.
Wouldn't it be a shame if you weren't able to protect your boy? And it's great how the board fell for the 49ers because there was only one tackle left. That was in that elite group. I know Austin Jackson went later, and there was but in that elite, that there was four guys, up front, lottery area, if you will, that people were talking about would go, and the Buccaneers had to get one of those tackles, so they get Tristan Wirfs from Iowa. They show a really cool video of him jumping out of the pool. I do want to
Right.
give credit. So I noticed that ESPN and NFL Network shared the broadcast because I want to take a
Hmm.
break and just talk about the experience. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
what was it like for you watching this? Just everyone kind of
Yeah.
communicating virtually, picks, the
I
broadcast team, and the
yeah.
commissioner.
Honestly, the commissioner stuff was a little bit awkward, but I mean, honestly, other than that, I enjoyed it. It felt like the draft was moving faster. Like I
The
like that
draft
I
did
didn't
feel
have
like it was moving faster. I agree.
right, and it may not from a time standpoint actually have, but it from like a visual
The
standpoint,
flow was
like
good.
yeah, the flow was really well. I like the we didn't have to wait for people to get off the stage. We didn't have to wait for the walk up and these awkward moments or anything like that. It felt like shit was just happening very quickly. And actually, you know what? Like, controversial opinion, alert. Like, I'm actually good with the draft like this. I'm good. If you told me that this is going to be the NFL draft, at least the first round for the next 5 to 10 years, I would be okay with it. Sign me up for this. We still saw the players reacting naturally with their family members. CeeDee Lamb
I actually
pulling.
thought the CeeDee Lamb phone thing with the girlfriend's hilarious. I do
yeah,
think though that we actually got more candid, a better
yeah,
idea of people's families and their girlfriends or side pieces or both, within these
mhm,
within their home or within their interaction, and seeing them just versus in the at the tables or whatever. Now I've been to the draft and it's a great experience, and I do having
yeah,
gone, I do want to see it return in person, but for a make do for what we're dealing with,
yeah,
they
absolutely.
I do give them a lot of credit for at least nailing night one. We'll see how the next two nights go, but
Well,
it
here's what
went
I'll say is
well.
this. Here's what I'll say is this, man. Like, and again, with everything going on in the world, shout out to all the people who are battling current circumstances. Shout out to all the people who have lost their life to the current circumstance. Um, like we all have been needing like a sports break in a way, right? Like,
Hmm.
and to be honest with you, man, me and you have both criticized the NFL for a lot of things, but this was exactly what it needed to be. It captivated the audience. People who usually wouldn't tune into the draft. I feel like the thought going into this was like, oh man, like I'm not gonna watch the draft. I'm gonna just watch it on my phone, like a lot of people do every year. But because of the circumstance, like this is the first really sporting event that we actually have, like in a couple months. So
Yeah,
um,
from a live perspective,
from
absolutely.
a
I know.
live, yeah,
Yeah, because the initial one was the Last Dance on Sunday,
yeah,
but
yeah,
from a
absolutely.
live,
This,
like we're watching it real time, don't know what's gonna happen type of thing,
yeah,
and
mhm,
having that sense of unexpectedness, absolutely, it was tonight.
yeah.
And
And
it's
I
just
would
good to
say
have
that
NFL, seeing
yeah,
football.
yeah, and the NFL I think did a this was one of the rare times where I feel like the NFL did a really really great job of captivating the audience. And granted, the picks may have been chalk, but it's still like it was something that it was worth watching. They did a very very well balanced to make sure that they got authentic reactions to also moving through these picks very quickly. So I like this. If you told me that this was going to be the format of the NFL draft from now on, I would be okay with it.
So there started to be some crazy stuff go down towards the back
Yes.
end, and that's where I want to finish the video
So after
with you.
17,
Yeah, basically after, because the Dolphins go up and get Austin Jackson at 18, which I was, you know, I don't know about that in terms of
so that's
him
the
being
that's
picked
the
that
that's
high.
that's the we picked a quarterback and we got to protect him. So we're going to pick the highest rated
Okay,
protector in the
so
draft.
that
So that's what that
for me that was a little bit of a head scratcher.
it
And
was.
then the next pick is Damon Arnett from Ohio State. Who, let me pause here and say this. I'm a Damon Arnett fan. he is
Yeah.
a very, very,
Yeah.
how should I put this? When you put on his tape, first thing you think is, oh, this guy's an asshole. I
He's
like that
solid.
in my
He's
I
solid.
like that in my corners. He battled on the outside this year, opposite of Jeffrey Okuda for Ohio State. Ohio State has
Yeah.
another corner that will go in the first round next year, and Sean Wade, who was playing nickel, who was like the number one corner when he came out of high school. Like Ohio State was stupid talented in the secondary,
Dumb
stupid
talent.
talented, dumb. Like, and they still got J.K. Dobbins who's still out there, and you know, a couple other guys, and they recruited Baron Browning in that same 2017 recruiting class. But Arnett,
Yeah.
in particular, um, didn't have the greatest combine. Time slow, and
What are you
now
talking
this,
about? Do you know what
I
he's
think
talking
it was
about?
like 4.6, wasn't it? Oh,
Yeah.
let me
Well,
verify that. But he goes to the 19 at the Raiders,
why
and
you look that up? Why
I
you
was a little
look that up?
surprised by that.
So why you looked at it? That was the first pick of the draft that I was kind of like head scratcher. Agreeing with you, head scratcher.
4.56
Because
for Arnett.
it's almost 4.6 guy. So Arnett is a good
Not the end all
player.
be all for a corner in terms of the 40, but
So I was
noteworthy.
on the phone. So I'm on the phone with my boy Sharper, Ryan Sharper, diehard One Just Me Sounds, diehard Ohio State fan, right? Even he in that moment was like, and mind you, Sharper depends everything on Ohio State.
Sure, I'm sure he
Everything
loves
on
Arnett, right?
everything. And he was just like, I think he was the first round pick though. Like, like, and that's kind of the general sense that I have about Arnett and from what I watched him play. Like, good player, solid, whatever the case is. For him to go in the first round, that was one of the first picks that I was like, Derek Brown. The Panthers picking Derek Brown wasn't a bad pick. It was just like
It
you could
wasn't
just
surprising. If you
yeah,
looked at
you
the
could have
mocks, half the mocks had Derek Brown going to Carolina. The
right.
other had half
Yeah,
Isaiah Simmons. It was
that was kind
one
of
or the
like
other. Yeah,
you could have been electrifying, but you went with something that was status quo, right? For that pick to happen with Arnett, it was almost kind of like, okay, like it just goes to show you the teams were really panicking of the corners, which for our Cowboys audience who's listening, like again, like there was no, so you could have not picked Trayvon Diggs didn't even get picked. Like
not yet. Not in the first. Yeah.
why did you have to bang that pick right there for Arnett? Like
Well,
what again?
but I told you this because we saw this play out later in the draft. I told you after C.J. Henderson, the corner
It got
that I
weird.
liked the most, the corner that I liked the most was Jeff Gladney from TCU.
You got
That's who I personally like the most. And I had some bias because
Vikings.
he ended up going to
Yeah,
the Vikings, and I didn't
yeah,
think Gladney was going to go in the first round because the buzz with him hadn't been low. But if you even go to NFL.com, he was the third graded corner. Gladney was
yeah.
not
He was good.
Fulton, not AJ Terrell, not Trayvon Diggs. Like it was actually Jeff Gladney. So to see, okay, AJ Terrell did go, but Fulton still on the board,
Yeah,
Trayvon Diggs still on the board, and then guys like a Damon Arnett go up. Now I will say this: Damon Arnett, he can stand by his film as well. He played well in that playoff game against Clemson. He
yeah,
played.
yeah.
He did play well. So he can stand by his film. And I think that with the corners, it's a little subjective when you look at overall how these teams are assessing. Also, scheme matters, right? Like, do you want the guy who's not going to take any risk and cover his man and not get turnovers, or are you going to take the gambler like a Trayvon Diggs or even a C.J. Henderson that's going to go and try to jump routes and may get
Right,
burned a little bit? So
right,
I also think there's some scheme modifications to that as well. A couple more people I want to bring up because we got to
right.
wrap up. Um,
Yeah,
Jordan Love. We need to address the Jordan Love trade.
yeah.
All right.
Packers.
So the Packers move up. The first off, the Patriots felt some type of way. They didn't, which is they weren't feeling Jordan Love because they could have selected him at 23. They trade out.
Yeah,
They trade completely out of the first round. And
you're right.
the Packers move up. few picks later, select Jordan Love. That's going to be probably top two storylines tomorrow is how does Aaron Rodgers feel about this? You guys have Aaron Rodgers on board. Now you're picking a Jordan Love. It's kind of like history repeating itself as to how Aaron
Yeah.
Rodgers came into the fray. What are your thoughts on Jordan Love being a Packer?
You know what? It's weird because I think that's I like we talked about Jordan Love going to the draft. I
We thought
thought
he would go
Jordan
higher
Love was
tonight.
we thought he would actually we thought we would go higher. I don't love him going to the Packers. Just because I think Aaron Rodgers has at least another 3 or 4 years in this arm. So it's one of those situations where I like the player, but I don't like the fit. Put it that way. Like uh, because I think if why my question for the Packers would be why are you drafting Jordan Love? Like are you planning on him being your starter in 4 years? What's the plan? If I'm the GM of that team, what's your plan? And that's where I don't know the answer to right now. Like that's
Well,
where I would be confused.
without even
And to be honest with you, if you're a Packers fan, like if you're a Packers fan, a general Packers fan, right? Whether you know the ins and outs of the details of the Packers organization, how do you feel about the pick? Like you just picked a quarterback in the first round. Why you have Aaron Rodgers?
right, you were in the NFC Championship game last year.
Mind you, fucking Tom Brady's still playing in his 40s. Like, I'm good with Aaron Rodgers. Like, I don't need another quarterback.
I think they're going to use the board excuse. Now, this is without us seeing any press.
You're right. Yes.
Because we're recording this right after the draft has ended.
Yep.
So I don't know what the Packers or the spin's going to be because I'm sure when you make a pick like that, you have to be prepared to face the noise. Number one. Number two, same thing with the Cowboys. You go up there and you say you pick the best player available on our board, and in that case, the way our evaluations went, we had Jordan Love very, very high. We felt good about it. Now the thing is, the Packers traded. Right,
Yes.
they traded up to go get Jordan Love, so
they targeted
him, right? Now, at the same token, you have to look at it this way as well. The Patrick Mahomes situation in the league, he's gotten some of those comparisons from an arm talent perspective and some of the movement things he's able to do. And playing in the situation that he was in at Utah State, I think scouts, we all have a nuanced eye to look to know, to start to delineate what we're looking at versus who he was playing with. And very, very interesting. But yeah, there was some craziness at the end. The Chiefs drafting Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I love it. I loved him at LSU. My man,
but
Maurice Jones-Drew Part 2. I'm like, man, they didn't care.
Again, Andy Reid does what Andy Reid wants.
We didn't think we were gonna have a running back in this first round, and they said nope.
I thought there would be a running back in the first round, at least one, and he went.
Win at the last
again,
pick.
Right, and again, I mean, it fits that it would be the Chiefs that would pick that guy, because they don't give a shit, and they're gonna go out there. But again, if you look at their position from a running back perspective, they didn't have great production. And
no, they won a Super Bowl with Damian Williams. And he's not a bad player, but like that was your lead, your most talented back. LaShawn McCoy didn't play in the Super Bowl. And now I get a Clyde Edwards-Helaire who's a 3-down back who's really, really good in the passing game.
What's crazy about him is I didn't know a whole lot about the player, right? But I'm watching Justin Jefferson. I'm watching all these other LSU players play. I'm watching Trayvon Diggs. And I'm seeing this guy pop off on my screen all the time. So
my little bowler ball.
Right. For Andy Reid to pick him, I was like, okay, that kind of figures. Like, it seems right. Like, I'm not.
I think he's going to do a lot of the things with him that he used to do with Brian Westbrook.
By the way, if I'm going to give the Jordan Love a pick grade, I'm giving it a C. Like, because, again, you got Aaron Rodgers. I don't see Aaron Rodgers in 3 or 4 years being done. So the pick doesn't make a ton of sense. But
that's going to be, I'm telling you, man, we're going to be, especially across ESPN. I already saw a lot of people tweeting about it tonight. It's a huge, huge storyline. The Cowboys getting CeeDee Lamb, huge, huge storyline. these teams going chalk. Maybe I think to
Yeah,
some
they went
degree,
chalk.
maybe
Do you think they went chalk because of the draft format this year?
I do. I think with
Yeah.
teams not having that interaction, we talked about how many conversations happen between scouts and
Yeah.
executives at happy hours, or when
Yeah.
everybody's in
Like,
the city for a pro day, or because
yeah.
the combine was really the last. I mean, I know there was a few pro days after the combine before everything shut down, but I do think though the other thing too is because everything's been so insulated with all the organizations.
Yeah.
I think people actually made more practical decisions with how they approach their draft because honestly, I would say 90% of these teams that picked tonight in the first round, I makes like what they did makes sense.
Right. This was
What they
actually one
did
of the
make
weird.
for them, it actually made sense.
So this is actually one of those weird times where, like you said, like I look at the draft and I'm like, even as I'm taking the notes, I'm like, there were very rare out of 32 picks that I was like, oh, that was silly or that was
They
stupid.
reached,
Everybody,
yeah, yeah,
yeah, everybody who they picked, I was like, I can kind of see why they did that. Like
yeah.
I understood the philosophy. Now my question for you, because I know we're wrapping up, is and I want our audience who is Cowboy fans, like, so we got rounds 2 and 3 coming up tomorrow. What are you looking at?
So obviously, the secondary has to be addressed, whether it's corner safety. And I think with the grades, and that was one of the things I'm like, hey, you look at a guy like a Ashton Davis or a Kyle Duggar, like what's the difference between them and Grant Delpit, or the difference between them and Xavier McKinney? And we got our answer tonight. Those guys were closer together than they were apart, and from an evaluation standpoint. So one of those
I just want
safeties
to
will
point out.
be.
I just want to point out that I was right about the Xavier McKinney thing. Solid player, not a difference maker. Did not go in the first round.
And we'll see how his career plays out.
We
But
will.
yeah, Zach Bond is still on the board,
He is.
who we both like.
But you know what's
There's
crazy though, Steven? Real talk. I'm not trying to interrupt you at all. I don't remember another time, and we've been doing this drafting for a while now.
mhm.
I don't remember another time that there's been so many names in the second round. Like, usually you get maybe five names in the first round. In the second
T.
round, you're like
Higgins is still on the board for
a
somebody.
lot, a
Gross
lot of
Matos,
guys.
Gross Matos from Penn State still on the board.
Yeah, it's
Justin Matabuke, if you want to go him from Texas A&M, defensive tackle. Like, there's a lot of different options. Jalen
a lot of
Johnson.
names.
So
Tristan, Tristan, the dude from LSU, the corner. Like, I mean, it's a
Christian
lot of
Fulton still, yeah. So
guys.
yeah, the Cowboys will be able to, I think, get a very, very sound, most likely a defensive prospect. And then if they want to go offensive line or something in the third round, their path is still very, very interesting on how they approach it. I still think they need to get a hybrid player for that can address in the front seven that can address and help them go multiple. And I still think they have to address the secondary, and it may be more
Is
than
that
one
hybrid
pick.
player? Is that hybrid player and end or a tackle?
I think it's going to be an outside linebacker that spins
Okay.
down to possibly having his hand on the dirt in some situations, or being a pass rushing specialist in some situations, but also
Okay.
somebody that can play outside linebacker for you. But how can you not be excited for CeeDee Lamb if you're a Cowboys fan with
Oh my God.
the addition to this offense? Look, I understand how deep the wide receiver class is, and I understand
You may
what
have
was
gotten
out
the
there,
best.
but you probably got the best of the best. And on top of that, you have a guy that is going to be electric to watch in the open field. So, Bruce, plug your podcast, brother, and let's tie off here.
Yeah. Yeah. So one chance many sounds. Shout out to Bobby, Brandon, Travis, Marcus, everybody who's ever played a part on One Chance Many Sounds. Rob. It's basically an entertainment podcast in terms of talking about real issues and things that are going on in the world. But check it out. Listen to it. I mean, it's a little something for everybody. My main thing is encouraging perspective. And I think we do a good job of that. So that's my shout out there.
Sounds good, brother. Well, I'll have you back on so we can wrap up some more draft talk, especially as
Oh
we're
yeah,
all
yeah.
staying connected. And it's such a fun time during the season. But thanks for joining, guys. Again, shout
Wait,
out to our.
real quick. I hate to break up your thing before you end up. Who
You're
do you
breaking up
want
the
in the second
flow,
round of
man.
the draft? Yeah, who do you want in the second round of the draft? Like, who's your guy?
I don't have a guy per
Give
se.
me a
I really
name.
don't. I mean,
Do you have
if
a
Zach
position?
Bond fell, I would love Zach. I'm still on the
Okay.
Zach Bond wagon. I don't think he's gonna fall to us though.
Okay. Okay. I'm gonna go with Christian Fulton in the second round. That's gonna be my guy in the second round.
All
I'm thinking
right,
it's gonna be a corner. All right.
another Cheeto in the building. Guys, want to plug our video sponsors, and I'll explain that tomorrow when I recap the second and third round. But Boston's Ranch, thank you again for sponsoring the video. Check them out, HEB, cold produce section. Some of y'all brothers keep going to the regular salad dressing aisle with the condiments, and you're not finding it. It is a fresh product. It's in the cold produce section. Do not forget that. Thank you, guys. I'll be back tomorrow with some more draft content. Over and out. Thank you, Brother Bruce. Appreciate you joining. Peace.
Bye.